And we're live.
So maybe before getting into today's topic, we do a quick 1 minute about why we talk about this.
Yes.
And how we met.
Let's do that. How did we meet?
We met 5 years ago in an entrepreneurship program that lasted about a year, maybe a bit less. And we would meet every week.
We would meet Fridays, have a full day of workshops.
Yeah, and then the rest of the week we would work in startups. So to enter that program, you had to either have your own startup or work at a startup.
Yeah, so we learned a whole ton about business, how to create a business, how to grow a business, and at the end, yes, how to scale and how to market, sustain. Yeah. And at the end, it led us to continue working with startups. Actually, both of us have not only worked on our own, but worked with different startups and scale-ups. And I think even we touched on corporates at some point in our careers and helped them grow in different ways, which leads us to this topic today.
Yeah.
Which are terminologies, if you follow anything in the tech world, that you probably have seen before. The topic of a unicorn startup, what it is. And I guess if you're a unicorn, you're no longer considered a startup. But then there's a very new term that we've been seeing coined and tossed around, which is the camel startup. So today's topic is essentially talking a little bit about that, talking about our experience in either, and just having a chat. No big deal.
As per usual, we're going to start by defining what's a unicorn for people that are not familiar with the term. But yes, so a unicorn startup is simply, it's a very hard status to reach. I'm just saying simply, it's super rare to get the unicorn status. So this startup has to be valued at $1 billion to be considered a unicorn, and it has to be done pretty fast. So usually when you hear about unicorn, is like explosive growth and it's like disrupting the market in some ways. But I feel like that status is really, when you're in the startup world, is like it's really the goal. It's like goals. I want to be a unicorn, or I want to work for a unicorn company. But today we'll see. Is it really all that? Obviously, I think the three biggest, I would say, advantages that you get in a unicorn is that cash flow, money. You really have obviously a lot of means to your ends. When you're a unicorn, you have tons of media coverage that you don't even need to pay for, because obviously everyone talks about you. It's like you're the hype, you're the moment. So definitely. And obviously you attract talent because of the two first one. You can afford talent, you can attract them, and you can attract really, really good talent. So those are always the good side and what we talk about all the time, and that's why we really aim for that. But obviously there are some downside. And so like Melissa said, we both worked in so many startups and scale-up, or with startups and scale-up. And I worked for a unicorn. I know the whirlwind and the excitement of being in one, and so it's an interesting topic for us to talk about.
Thank you for introducing unicorns. I think there's a lot more that we can say, but before we go there, let's also introduce the other side of what a unicorn is, which when we even think of unicorns outside of the context of startups, it's almost like this mystical creature that everyone wants to see, but it doesn't exist. So it really touches on the rarity of unicorns. But we've seen a lot of articles come out, and maybe a book or two around the concept of a camel. And it's, I would say, another one of the remarkable creatures. And I'm not just saying that because I'm Arab. But I do think there are traits of a camel that can be assimilated to a startup, which is it can withstand really hot temperatures. It can go a long way without water. So we're really touching on its resilience and its ability to stay adaptable, flexible, kind of resilient to challenges.
Which you will need as a startup.
Exactly. All of which are things that we need in a startup environment. not to be shaken. Whereas in unicorns, because you are essentially getting funded or have a lot of money and have a lot of people throwing attention at you, you're much less rigid in your foundation, it seems. And we'll get to why and how that manifests, I would say, maybe in a team dynamic or employee dynamic. But what camels refer to in startups are essentially startups that are not going to get funding immediately, that are a little bit slower to grow, prioritize profitability, prioritize being able to generate their own revenue, being customer-centric, being flexible.
Making sure the product works and is actually helping others. Even though when we talk about unicorn, we always say disrupt and it helps people so much. But yeah, making sure it actually does what it's supposed to do, and we can deploy those means in a way that we're kind of proud of already. Because what happened a lot in unicorns is, oh, we want to get to that endpoint, get those market share, get. And the way we get them isn't that important yet, because we'll fix it later down the line. And obviously that's what we want to avoid, right? It's like, let's make stuff that we're already proud of. And obviously, like, we can always refine them down the line, but not have to change all the... Because obviously we know, and then there's so much change management to do, and you have to re-skill your employee and retrain your employees, and it's just more work for later.
I think the word that comes to mind when I think of it is camels are more mindful of their growth. It feels more sustainable how the growth happens, because you're less bothered by doing it quickly and have insane amounts of traction to push into the market to prove that you are rapidly achieving that hockey growth. Here, VC, fund me more. But you care more about, would I work still without external funding? Yes, fantastic. I can go for it if I want to, but I've got it together without, which I find admirable. And I think that's the type of startup I've had much more experience with. Those that want to bootstrap, they want to grow slowly, but still want to stay. Like, this is their business that they want to keep for a long time. So sustainability is more important than explosive growth. What would you say are some other maybe pros or cons that you have seen in a unicorn? You've worked in one, so I'd love to hear your experience.
Should we give quick examples of companies that are unicorns for people that really don't know what they are? So you guys know them. You've heard of... We would talk about the ones, put names out there that you've heard already. And that means that those are unicorns that reach the unicorn status and then manage to stay afloat and live. So you've heard of Airbnb, you've heard of Get Here, you've heard of Monzo, Klarna.
A lot of the
ones.
fintechs,
Uber,
I would say, any of the commercial,
Revolut,
not commercial, but challenger banks that we use on a day-to-day have been unicorns, like Monzo, Revolut, Starling, and the other. But I would say, again, it ripples down to other, like logistics, taxi apps, grocery apps, any of those that kind of really relied on external funding to get afloat and compete and really, really quickly scale. What are some bad examples that we can give people of a unicorn? Just to show or highlight when we say cons or speak about cons, they can maybe think of stories.
There's one word that the first brand that came to my mind. I want to see if you thought about the same. Do you want us to say at the same time? Think about a unicorn and a bad one, like a bad example. As in not a bad, but like a unicorn that went downhill.
Okay,
that almost went to bankruptcy. Are you ready?
Oh, the one
we're going to say at 3.
Okay. Let's just try.
Let's just
3,
try.
2, 1. WeWork.
Yeah.
I was like, I hope she's referring to...
I think everyone would think about WeWork in the first place. I mean, how can you get so up there and then almost bankrupt, you know?
You've seen documentaries, you've seen the articles, you've probably heard the story.
Maybe you haven't, but you've seen them all in London. There's so many of them.
They're everywhere. I'm not ashamed to say I worked in a WeWork, and
You
that
don't
was
have
a
to be
big.
ashamed.
And I could feel, because I was still there when all these articles were coming out, and we were wondering, like, would that affect my membership in any way?
Yeah.
But definitely an example of how it can go south very quickly.
Yeah, we can link a user case, or just honestly just Google, guys.
Yeah, just Google. We're happy to share any resources of the startups that we talk
the
about.
study case, the WeWork study case.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
But when I think of camels in relation to like household names that people know, Zoom is a very nice example, because we think it's a unicorn, but actually its growth and the way the business was built is that of a camel, a very like long-term growth, sustainable growth mindset, but also adaptable. And you can see the features being adapted in the way it's used by customers throughout the pandemic. And actually that's how Zoom exploded so much, is during COVID, we started using it a lot more. And then
they were the ones that were ready. Like they were the one already ready for that.
Exactly.
All the other actors, they actually adapted and be like, we need to create a product for all these people to collaborate, to co-work. Zoom was like, we have it.
We have it ready, and we're listening, right? So what do you need? Oh, you need a button to when you leave the call to kind of, you know,
you need
really,
break rooms, you need
we wanted to build a product that works with you and your needs, and you could see how Zoom shifted across these weeks and months to adapt to the needs of the user, which I found really fantastic. Of course, there are big cons of Camels, and Zoom is a big household name, but when we talk about other products, you don't necessarily hear about them. There's not much media attention on it. It slowly creeps on you. It's like, oh, something like this exists? Cool.
And so you find out when they usually have been around already for years.
Exactly.
It's not like, oh, that's so new and, you know.
Exactly. It doesn't explode and like, we just launched and we're ready. We're going to give you free products. Try our product for free as long as you want. Return it whenever you want. It feels like a lot of the unicorns just splurge their money on these marketing, on initiatives to put the product in front of the person, force them to use it for free, and then you kind of are stuck with the product because they gave it to you. You're like, what do I do now? It's on my phone. I guess I'm a user. Whereas I would say Camels, they emerge when you have a need and you start searching for a solution and it's there. And you're like, oh, you never pushed it on me, but I want to use it. And not to say any of them are bad or good. It's really not a case of that. It's really about what you want to go for. But we want to touch on the structure of the company a little bit. So if you are currently working on a startup, building something, what can you take from both to make it work?
It's really good to have it in mind. And it's good, like when you talked about the mindful aspect of Camel, I think mindful really makes me think as well, as in, how do you want your startup or the startup you're working for to impact the society and the environment and everything? And so obviously something that I see a lot with unicorns is that it's so disruptive and you want to gain so many shares so fast that you just do anything to get to those shares. And it's fair because you want to get to that status and you have, you know, all of that pressure. Obviously what comes with the unicorn status is huge pressure when it comes to your growth. It has to be so exponential. And also there is also the downside of like, is that valuation really true? But that's another thing. But when it comes to this, is like, you want to be so competitive that you're really ready to give so much to your customer for free that you're going to lose a lot of money. And a lot of unicorns, they don't even know when they'll be profitable because they start in so much deficit. Like they will go to some extent of like, your aim is not even to be profitable, it's barely to break even, it's just to, you know, and so that damages, that can, not always, but that can damage so much your competitive landscape, as in, okay, your biggest competitors, people that really have the means to compete against you, they can go, you know, and you can have that kind of healthy challenge, and then the customers are having a good time because they can just have discount on discount from all the actors in place. But the smaller company, the local ones, the ones that are just doing their thing, they can really shut down. They can't compete with that. They're like, how could I possibly? Because my business is family run, it's a small thing, it's just a few of us. We are profitable because we're bootstrapped, and we would not even think about having investors because, you know, we're just a tiny corner store.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, when you think a bit about the bigger picture and how much can your unicorn impact actually the landscape and the people around, is like being a bit mindful, because going in those marketing wars and everything free wars is it can be very damaging for your competitors. And you care about your competitors because, I mean, you know, you care about other businesses. And obviously the environment on the other side. Obviously the environment, like really, like as in, you know, how much can you pollute to get your ends? That's another very big, difficult topic. Is like, we will see later about sustainability. We will see later about our packaging. We will see later about our carbon offsetting. We will see later. It's a slippery slope.
Yes, that's such a shame, because I feel like on the side of the camels that are also, by the way, grow as big and kind of meaningful, impactful as unicorns would. But what we see differently is the prudence around financial growth, around maybe sustainability. We can't speak to all of them, but I would say there's a general prudence of the approach of, I don't want to burn too much too quick, and I don't want to raise too much too quick. What can I do to create alternative revenue streams, to leverage different markets and different ways of making money so I can still stay afloat? Whereas they could very easily also just focus on one, give a lot of freebies and make it happen. We see them actually take a very different approach to monetization, which I really love. And this is what I push for every single startup I work with, is what are some different ways you can make money? Don't just stick to one USP. Don't stick to one main source of kind of money and magnets. Oh, this is how we're going to collect money and that's it. No, there's so many ways, and you have to, and this is what we call business model innovation. You need to innovate the way you run the business and the way you monetize the business to stay afloat longer. Right now, the competition, like you said, is crazy. So you can't tell me you've come up with an idea that no one's ever thought before, no one's ever trialed, and it's like a secret. I'm pretty sure...
Stealth mode.
Yes. Sorry. A secret confidential startup is hiring for... I love confidentiality.
To all my people on LinkedIn that have currently stealth mode on their profile, I do respect you though. Like, do your thing. I love it. But yeah, sometimes it can be funny.
It can be funny to see, and I really appreciate, because I was there, right? I've been there when I worked on my startup at first. I didn't want to talk about it too much until I had something, and it was a lot of, discussions and building, and then you have your first failure, and I think the door opens up a little bit, and you start noticing, well, you were 20, it's fine. You were young, you tried the project, it didn't really work, but now you have so many learnings that can help others. And I think this is another reason why we started recording this podcast and putting this on a professional platform, is let's share. Like, what have we learned that can maybe help someone else? And these experiences we've had with startups outside of our own are also great learnings, because we've interacted with certain number of senior stakeholders that make decisions that can really drive the growth or the failure of a business. This is beyond, I think, the discussion around unicorn and camel, but I would love to get to in another episode. I do want to maybe start thinking about another con of both, right? Both camel and unicorns in the way that they affect the people working in them. Would you like to go first?
Yes, honestly, I would challenge anyone out there, you, me, anyone listening, if they know a unicorn company that has gotten that status, became a unicorn without going through the burnout of some of their employees. I did not burn out in a unicorn, by the way, but definitely felt the stretch. And as much as the unicorn that was spotted was amazing, beautiful place to work at, we all felt at a certain, there was the pre-raise, like we raised 1 billion, more than 1 billion. That was a crazy round. But I was there before raising this and after. And so I was there when we were doing the very aggressive marketing and when we were trying to be okay, not profitable, but trying to let's spend less and etc. That stretch on the whole team is really massive, because even though you're trying, the management was really good above me. My management, I like to think, was really good for the people below me. Even though the management was healthy and good, you feel that stretch. If you're part of a unicorn, you to get to that status and go through those motions, I can't help but to do this. Really, you are stretched. You have to stretch people. And it's do you really want to think, oh, I want that status so bad, or I want to get that crazy growth so bad that I'll sacrifice the well-being of real people? At the end of the day, if you started the business, if you want to do this business, it's because you're trying to help people, right? You want to solve a problem that people have. So it's a good intention. And somewhere in the equation, you're thinking, your team, it's not one person, right? Yeah, to help more people, we're going to sacrifice the well-being of some. What is this? Is it necessary? It's... I think there is a lot of ego that comes in there. Because if we didn't have that thing of I want that status, I want that media coverage, I want that we're the first in Europe, we're the first in UK. Would you be so in a rush to do all of this if there wasn't for the ego and then the burnout of people? So yes, if you know a unicorn that's gotten unicorn without burning out a few employees, please let us know in comments.
Do let us know. It's true, and I think employee burnout is a big topic, and you see it across. I'm not one to say, well, if you were a camel, your employees are mentally
no. We know some camels resilient. That are not ideal either.
But I think there's maybe another side of the coin where we can look at the uncertainty level of a camel environment, because you don't grow that quickly. There's always a bit of trust required and uncertainty for the employee, and trust the process and kind of trust the vision and trust the team to take it to the place that the vision is, because it does go much slower.
And the money is probably not as great to start with.
Exactly, because you're really trying to be mindful. So you're not going to raise crazy rounds. You're not going to give away too much of your equity. You want to be better with your money. Yeah. And that means you can't pay that much. And you can't really stretch yourself in terms of salary, growth opportunity, equity, like the attractive unicorn would do, and gives you so much. And, almost, you have a problem? Well, here's a little bit more bonus or money, and kind of let's make it work together. In the camel, you would see much less of that. So I think that environment of trust is important. As an employee, you should be able to say, it's going to be okay, and I'm fine with this approach, and really look big vision. But it is tiring. So I've been in that. I think... Flipping the coin, I've been on the other side where I've had to trust a lot more the businesses I've worked with, and it's a slower burn, and I've had to really be patient for the rewards to come in. Not to say they don't come in, they do. It takes longer, and you need to be able to also have many eggs in different baskets, and ready to be agile, because the camel itself, not just as an employee, is a very adaptive structure. When one of your revenue streams doesn't work, you're going to try to adapt the product, like a Rubik's Cube, to, okay, let me try to solve it in a different way. Whereas unicorns, you have expectations almost that VC set on you. You can't make big decisions on the fly. You can't change the business model overnight.
And you can't take all decisions anymore. You have a big board.
Yes, you have a board, you have to present, there are certain roles. We see that in camels, if you owned majority of your shares and you are like a typical bootstrapped own majority equity, you make decisions and you try to be as adaptive as possible to the market. It's not about first to market, it's about customer centricity, being able to understand the trends that are coming up, predict them, and adapt for those. So we found this topic so interesting. We feel like we can talk about this for hours, but we'd love to hear about your experiences if you've worked with any camels, unicorns, or other animals. We've found many articles.
Found plenty.
Where zebras are mentioned and
gazelle are mentioned.
Exactly. Yes. So we're not going to touch on those. We wanted to keep it short and sweet and hear about your experience. If you have any topic suggestions you'd like us to talk about based on our experiences with different businesses, please do.
Bring on.
And we wish you a great day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.